Usually, when we're trying to predict a massive geopolitical shift or maybe a military invasion, we're looking at things like satellite imagery.
Right. Or troop movements.
Exactly. Or,
Yeah.
leaked State Department cables. But for today's deep dive, the very first indicator that the world was about to just turn upside down, it didn't come from the CIA.
No, it
It
didn't.
came from a Domino's.
Ah, the pizza meter.
Yeah,
It's become a bit of a legend in the open source intelligence community, but the thing is it's shockingly reliable.
it really is. So let's set the scene for you. It's the evening of January 2nd, 2026, late night. And suddenly, there is this absolute avalanche of pizza orders flooding into the Pentagon.
And we aren't talking a few extra pepperonis here.
No, we are talking a major statistical anomaly.
Hmm.
And anyone who tracks this stuff knows the rule. When the cheese and dough start flying in Washington, D.C. after midnight, the Situation Room is busy.
Yeah, because defense personnel, they have to eat. And if they aren't going home to their families, it generally means a crisis is either breaking or a go order has just been given. And in this case, that pizza spike was the precursor to Operation Absolute Resolve.
Which,
And there is a massive disconnect between the victory lap the administration is taking right now and the reality on the ground. I mean, they're selling this as a masterstroke of resource acquisition.
right, grabbing the oil.
Yeah, but the numbers suggest they might have just seized a massive liability.
Okay, before we get to the money, though, we have to talk about the operation itself. Because the sheer logistical footprint was wild. Our sources show 150 aircraft from 20 different locations,
Just some massive coordination.
14,000 troops, and an entire aircraft carrier group parked off the coast.
It was a textbook display of overwhelming force. But the kinetic side of it,
Right.
the planes and the troops, that was almost secondary.
Yeah.
The real story here is the digital warfare. Sources indicate that U.S. Cyber Command and the SCIFs force didn't just jam some signals, they effectively deleted the administrative state of Venezuela for about 6 hours.
That part really stood out to me in the reports. They didn't just blind the air defense radars. They completely shut down the power grid in Caracas.
Killed the cellular networks.
Scrambled military comms. I mean, it wasn't a battle. It was total system paralysis.
Exactly. And it sets a terrifying new precedent. In modern warfare, you don't actually need to bomb every anti-aircraft battery if you can just turn off the enemy's ability to see, hear, and speak.
Wow.
By the time the Delta Force operators were fast roping onto the Miraflores Palace, the Venezuelan military was completely deaf and blind.
And speaking of Delta Force, the capture itself reads like a thriller. They caught Maduro trying to reach a steel safe room down in the palace basement.
Yeah, nowhere to hide.
They snapped a photo of him blindfolded on the deck of the USS Iwo Jima, and within hours, he is in New York.
It is a totally surreal trajectory, going from absolute power to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn in less than a day.
And you really have to appreciate the dark irony of his current living situation. The sources note he's essentially moving into the celebrity wing of the MDC.
Oh, wait.
He's joining the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein and Sean Diddy Combs.
That is quite the roster.
I can just picture Diddy and Maduro out in the exercise yard, comparing notes on asset forfeiture. Diddy saying, "The feds took my mansions," and Maduro saying, "Amigo, they took my country."
It's a funny image, but that transition going from head of state to inmate, that's where the narrative starts to get really messy, because Secretary of State Marco Rubio initially tried to frame this whole thing as a law enforcement operation.
Right.
He wanted to sell it to the public as the world's biggest drug bust.
So President Trump wasn't having any of that police work framing, was he? He was incredibly blunt. He just came out and said, effectively, we are in charge now.
And that is the dangerous leap here. Taking out a leader is absolutely not the same thing as controlling a nation.
We've seen this before.
Exactly. We've seen this movie. Saddam Hussein in 2003, Gaddafi in 2011. There's this persistent fallacy in foreign policy that if you cut off the head of the snake, the body just goes limp.
When historically, the body usually thrashes around and knocks down the entire house. And the why behind this thrashing brings us to the central pillar of the operation, the oil. The administration hasn't been shy about this at all.
No, they haven't.
The rhetoric shifted almost immediately from liberating Venezuela to spoils of war. Trump explicitly stated the U.S. intends to seize 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, claiming it's worth about $3 billion.
Right. He's looking at it as a straight transaction. We spent money on the military raids, so we're taking the oil to reimburse the U.S. taxpayer. It sounds really good on a bumper sticker.
But here's where the math gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean disastrous. You and I looked at the reports from Rystad Energy and the analysis from the major oil companies.
Yeah, the economics are grim.
Venezuela has the largest proven reserves in the world, sure. But isn't there a massive quality issue?
That is the critical nuance that gets lost. When people hear oil, they think of the light, sweet crude that bubbles up in Texas or Saudi Arabia.
And stuff that's easy to refine into gasoline.
Exactly. But Venezuelan crude is, well, it's garbage.
It's basically sludge, isn't it?
It's asphalt. It is incredibly heavy. It's high in sulfur, and it literally has the consistency of molasses. You cannot just pump it out of the ground and sell it. You have to dilute it with lighter fluids like naphtha or light crude just to get it to flow through a pipe.
And ironically, the reports mention Venezuela used to buy those dilutants from Russia, which is obviously off the table now.
Right.
So we have essentially captured a massive ocean of sludge that we currently cannot move.
And even if you could move it, you still have to refine it. Because of that high sulfur content, you need specialized refineries with stainless steel piping to handle the corrosion. And this brings us to the actual cost.
Rystad Energy crunched those numbers, right? On what it would take to get this industry moving again. I saw this in the source material. The break-even price.
Yes. To drill new wells, fix the rotting infrastructure, buy the dilutants, and process this heavy sour crude, your break-even price is roughly $80 a barrel.
Wait, and Brent crude is currently trading at what, $60?
Hovering right around 60.
Okay, so let's be crystal clear about this for our listeners. The U.S. government is planning to seize an asset that costs $80 to produce, just so they can sell it for $60. We are invading a country to lose $20 on every single barrel.
That is the economic reality. It's negative equity on a national scale. And that doesn't even account for the state of the hardware on the ground.
How bad is it?
The state oil company, PDVSA, has been gutted for 20 years. The refineries are running at maybe 20% capacity. The pipelines are rusted out.
And the personnel.
Gone. The skilled engineers fled to Houston or Madrid a decade ago. It's run by soldiers with no expertise.
Well, that completely explains why the actual oil companies, ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, are treating this opportunity like radioactive waste.
No.
I read a quote in our research from Exxon CEO Darren Woods, where he explicitly called Venezuela uninvestable.
They know the score. You have to remember, Exxon and Conoco are still owed something like $10 billion from when Hugo Chavez seized their assets years ago.
Right, they haven't forgotten that.
They want their old money back. They have zero interest in dumping billions of new dollars into a literal war zone just to pump unprofitable sludge.
Especially when they can just go next door to Guyana.
Exactly. That is the perfect contrast. Guyana's right next door. They have light sweet crude. They actually have the rule of law. And their break-even price is $35 a barrel.
Wow.
Chevron is pouring money into Guyana. Why would any rational CEO choose Venezuela over that?
So the economics are a total bust. Let's pivot to the politics, because this is where the mission gets even stranger. We removed a dictator. Standard operating procedure would be to install the Democratic opposition leader.
Which would be Maria Corina Machado.
Right. Her coalition won 2/3 of the vote in 2024. She is the legitimate choice, according to the international community.
But she is not the choice the White House is making. She is being completely sidelined.
And the reason, and I honestly had to double check this source when we were prepping because it sounds so petty, the reason is the Nobel Peace Prize.
It appears to be a major factor, yes. Sources close to the administration say Trump has a deep personal grievance against Machado because she accepted the Nobel Peace Prize.
You're kidding.
He reportedly believes she should have declined it and stated publicly that the prize actually belonged to him.
He even mentioned this on Sean Hannity. He said he'd be willing to accept the prize if she transferred it to him.
Which, of course, the Nobel Committee had to issue a statement clarifying is completely impossible.
Naturally.
But because of this bruised ego, U.S. foreign policy is shifting. We aren't backing the Democratic winner. Instead, we're seeing the formation of what critics are calling a Frankenstein government.
This is the part that reads like bad fiction. We decapitate the Maduro regime, but instead of installing the opposition, we're shaking hands with the Rodriguez siblings, Delcy and Jorge Rodriguez.
Who were the absolute pillars of the Maduro regime.
Right.
Delcy was the vice president. Jorge was the president of the National Assembly. These are the ultimate insiders.
So let me get this straight. We raided the country to get rid of the bad guys, and now we're partnering with the bad guys' right-hand men.
It looks like a negotiated extraction. The prevailing theory in the intelligence reports is that the Rodriguez faction sold out Maduro to save their own skins and to keep a slice of power.
Okay, but think about the risk there. That seems incredibly unstable.
It's a recipe for disaster. You have the military generals, the hardliners, and the armed militias, the colectivos, out in the streets. They have spent decades chanting anti-imperialist slogans.
Then now,
Now you're asking them to take orders from Delcy Rodriguez, who they likely view as a traitor who just cut a deal with the gringos.
so it's not just a puppet government. It's a government with a massive target on its back.
Precisely. You're basically asking for an insurgency. The generals aren't going to just salute and retire. They're going to fight for control of the drug trade, the illegal gold mining, and whatever power is left. We haven't stabilized Venezuela. We've uncorked a civil war.
And this chaotic approach brings us to the broader implication we found in the sources, the Donroe Doctrine.
Right. The administration has coined this term, Trump plus Monroe.
Now, the original Monroe Doctrine from 1823 was basically telling Europe to stay out of our hemisphere. It was defensive.
Correct. It was a shield. The Donner Doctrine flips that entirely. It's predatory. It claims the U.S. has the right not just to protect the hemisphere, but to own and manage its resources.
Wow.
Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, defended this by saying the world is governed by iron laws of strength, not international law.
That makes right.
Exactly.
And speaking of international law, the raid itself kidnapping a foreign head of state, that is a direct violation of the UN Charter, isn't it?
Article 2, paragraph 4, it explicitly prohibits the use of force against sovereign states. There's no asterisk in the charter that says, unless you really want their oil.
But the administration seems to be anticipating this legal blowback because they've gone on the offensive against the courts themselves. And this detail about the International Criminal Court really shook me when I read it.
It should shake everyone. The administration sanctioned ICC judges, including Judge Kimberly Prost, but they didn't just ban them from traveling.
No, they went after their personal lives. They froze Judge Prost's U.S. bank accounts. But then, and this is the truly terrifying part, her Amazon and Microsoft accounts were canceled.
Think about what that actually means for a person today. It is digital exile.
Yeah.
She can't buy books, she can't use cloud services, she can't even use her email. She is effectively put on a list with terrorists and Russian oligarchs simply because she authorized an investigation into U.S. actions in Afghanistan.
It's weaponizing the banking and tech sectors against the judiciary. It sends a very clear message. If you judge us, we will delete you.
Exactly. It's a targeted attempt to dismantle the very concept of international accountability through financial brute force.
But surely, despite all this maneuvering, once Maduro was actually sitting in a courtroom in New York, doesn't the fact that he was kidnapped matter? I mean, can you really try someone you snatched in a midnight raid?
You would certainly think that would be a jurisdictional problem, but the U.S. legal system has a very specific and quite old precedent for this. It's called the Kerr-Frisbee Doctrine.
Kerr-Frisbee. It sounds like a law firm.
Yeah.
Or maybe a Frisbee golf team.
It does, but it dates all the way back to the 19th century. In simple terms, the Supreme Court has ruled that the power of a court to try a person for a crime is not impaired by the fact that he had been brought within the court's jurisdiction by reason of a forcible abduction.
Wow. So basically, we don't care how you got here, just that you're here.
Glad you could make it. Don't worry about the ride. So Maduro's defense lawyers can scream about international law all they want, but under U.S. domestic law, his capture is perfectly admissible. He is going to lose that argument.
And this massive shift, this Donroe Doctrine, the complete disregard for international law, it's not staying contained in Venezuela. The sources mention this is sending shockwaves globally.
It absolutely is. Just look at Greenland.
Oh, right, the Greenland Purchase. I thought that was a joke from a few years ago.
It's back on the table. Trump is pivoting back to buying Greenland, explicitly stating he'll do it the easy way or the hard way.
Unbelievable.
He views NATO treaties not as binding alliances, but as leases he can just cancel if he doesn't get the real estate he wants.
And if you are China, watching all of this unfold, watching the U.S. decapitate a sovereign regime just to take their resources, what is your takeaway?
Your takeaway is a massive green light. Security analysts are terrified that Beijing looks at this and thinks, okay, the rules-based order is officially dead. If the U.S. can do this in Caracas just because they have the strength, then we can do this in Taiwan.
It completely validates their worldview. It replaces international law with raw power.
Exactly. If the U.S. argues that strength is the only law, then China feels much more confident exercising its own strength.
Meanwhile, back at home, critics are calling this a classic wag the dog scenario.
It certainly checks all the boxes. You have domestic inflation causing massive political problems.
Yeah.
You have the Epstein scandal headlines dominating the news cycle.
Right.
A quick, victorious war is the ultimate distraction. And look at the budget proposal that came right along with it. $1.5 trillion for a dream military.
That number is just staggering. It suggests this isn't a one-off event. It's funding a long-term strategy.
It signals that resource rating is the new foreign policy standard.
So let's try to summarize this absolute whirlwind for everyone. We started with the pizza spike near the Pentagon. We ended up with a raid that took out Maduro, ignored the actual Democratic winner because of a petty Nobel Prize grudge, and installed a Frankenstein government of former regime insiders.
All to seize oil that actually costs more to extract than it's worth on the market, while simultaneously declaring war on the international legal system.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. And I think the big takeaway for you, as the listener, the thing to really chew on here, is the difference between a tactical victory and a strategic one.
Right. We won the night.
We absolutely won the night. The U.S. proved it has the military might to go anywhere, at any time, and take anyone. No one questions that capability. But the question is, what happens the next morning?
Did we actually solve the problem?
By bypassing international law, ignoring the very basic economics of the oil market, and sidelining the only legitimate Democratic leader, has the U.S. actually secured a victory? Or have we just purchased a decades-long insurgency that will ultimately cost the American taxpayer far more than that sour crude oil will ever be worth?
That is the trillion-dollar question, and we're going to be watching it play out in real time. Thanks for helping us unpack all these sources today.
Always a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.